Copenhagen needed a new power plant, the kind every neighborhood fights to keep out of its backyard. So they built one the neighbors actually asked for. It burns 450,000 tons of the city's garbage a year and turns it into heat and power for tens of thousands of homes. And on the roof, they put a public ski run and a hiking trail. A power plant that heats your house, cleans up your trash, and gives your kids somewhere to play. Hold on to that, because it is the whole idea we are chasing today, and there is a version of it hiding inside your exam. Here is why that matters for the test in front of you. For years, sustainability on a project was a nice to have, a line in the mission statement the marketing team cared about, not something that changed a single decision a project manager made on a Tuesday. That era is over. On the 2026 exam, sustainability quietly moved from a slogan into a testable consideration, and there is one reflex the best, most experienced project managers get wrong precisely because they are so good at delivery. Miss it, and you pick the confident, efficient, wrong answer. Stay with me, we build the whole way of thinking today.
And that Copenhagen plant is the whole reframe made concrete, so let me name it cleanly. For a long time, we measured a project one way. Did it come in on time, on budget, and did it do what the scope said? 3 questions, all about delivery. What is changing on the exam and in the real world is that a 4th lens got added, and it does not replace the others. It sits alongside them. Was this project responsible? Did we think about the people it touched, the environment it affected, and the value it creates over years? Not just the day we handed it over. A project can hit every date and every dollar and still be judged a failure now because it left a mess someone else has to clean up. On time is not the same as done well anymore. And the framework underneath that has a name you should carry into the exam room. The triple bottom line. Instead of measuring a project on one bottom line, profit, you measure it on 3. People, planet, and profit. The social impact on the humans involved, the environmental impact on the world around it, and the economic impact, the money. 3 legs of the same stool, and a strong project balances all 3 instead of maximizing one and ignoring the other 2. That balance is the whole concept, and I want you to be able to see it, not just hear it.
Kai here, and I have to be the one to say it. This is a project management exam, not a climate rally. I optimize scope, schedule, and budget. Why is my job suddenly about saving the planet?
Because it is not about saving the planet, Kai, and that misread is exactly what costs people points. This is not activism, and it is not politics. It is a project management discipline and a risk lens. A sustainability failure is just a risk that materializes. A regulatory fine, a lawsuit, a recall, a building nobody will lease, a client who walks because you missed their standard. People, planet, profit just forces you to see costs, the old single number view left off the page. I did not add this because they went soft. They added it because a project manager who ignores it exposes the business, and that is squarely your job.
And picture the very concrete shape of that. 2 suppliers bid on your project. One is a little cheaper and hits your date. The other costs a bit more, but meets a sustainability standard your client actually requires and produces far less waste you would be liable for later. The old reflex grabs the cheaper, faster one and calls it decisive. And on this exam, more and more, that is the trap. The intended answer is the one that weighs the whole picture, the long-term cost, the risk, the requirement, the people downstream, not just the number on the invoice today.
Fine, but nobody picks the expensive option just because it feels noble. So give me the actual fork, because I will only buy this if it is real. On one side, you optimize for the cheapest, fastest delivery, full stop. On the other, you optimize for the responsible outcome, which weighs cost and schedule, but also the environment, the people, and the value over the whole life of the thing. Same project, 2 different definitions of winning. And what you are telling me is the exam keeps quietly choosing the second one.
That is exactly the fork, and yes, it does. One quick, useful thing before we go deeper. Over at certs.professorerica.com, there are free practice questions and free flashcards, no sign-up, and the business environment set is full of these exact traps, where the fast, efficient move is the exam wrong one. Run them right after this while it is fresh. And this whole trend threads through business environment, now 26% of your exam, and the piece most people study least. So sit with this before the frameworks. Your sponsor wants the cheapest option that still hits the deadline. The sustainable option costs a little more upfront. Your gut says protect the budget and pick the cheap one. Is that what the exam wants? Because it is about to become the wrong one more often than the right one. Quick honest ask while we are here. If this has been worth your time so far, hit like, then subscribe and ring the bell. I know everyone asks, but this one is free, and it is how a small channel like this actually grows. To pressure test the sustainability calls today, we have Professor Fontaine at the desk. He is here to help us find where the responsible sounding answer is genuinely the right one, and where it quietly is not. Professor Fontaine, welcome.
Glad to be here, Professor Erica. And let me start by diffusing the word, because it does half the damage. When people hear sustainability, they brace for politics. On this exam, it means something narrower and far more useful. It means a project that can keep delivering value without creating a cost that comes back to bite the business, the people, or the environment later. That is it. Read it that way, and the whole topic stops being a debate and starts being risk management.
That is the right frame, and the reassuring news is you are not being asked to invent any of this. These are settled ideas with names and dates. Maya, where does the triple bottom line even come from?
A man named John Elkington. He coined the phrase triple bottom line back in 1994 and built it out in a 1997 book. And his whole argument was simple. For centuries, we measured a business on one number. Did it make money? He said that number is too narrow because a company can make money this quarter while quietly wrecking the community it sits in or the environment it depends on. And that bill always comes due. So measure 3 bottom lines instead. People, the social account. Planet, the environmental account. Profit, the economic account. And here is the part the exam cares about. It is not planet instead of profit. It is balance. A project that is great for the environment but bankrupts the company is not sustainable either because it does not last. Harmony among the 3, not one crushing the others. And there is a clean way a project manager actually puts this to work. 4 moves. First, you identify the impacts. Where does this project touch people and the environment? Then you design them in. You build the sustainable choice into the plan early instead of bolting it on at the end. Then you measure it with real numbers, not vibes. And then you report it honestly. Identify, design in, measure, report. Do it in that order, and sustainability stops being a poster on the wall and becomes part of how the project is run.
And every one of those moves already has a professional standard behind it, which is why you do not improvise. For an environmental management system, there is ISO 14001, the one you can actually be certified against. For measuring a product's whole life impact, there is lifecycle assessment, ISO 14040, which forces you to look at raw materials, production, use, and disposal, not just the shiny middle. And for reporting it, there is GRI, the most widely used sustainability reporting standard in the world. You do not memorize the numbers for the exam. You know this is a mature discipline with real tools, not a feelings exercise.
And this is where PMI's own hand shows, which is the part that puts it on your exam. PMI and a group called Green Project Management jointly maintain a standard called P5, built specifically for sustainability in project management, and it lines up with the PMBOK guide and connects a project's impacts to the same ESG reporting the business already answers to. So when the exam tests this, it is not testing your politics. It is testing whether you can run a project the way PMI's own published standard says a modern one should be run.
Okay, I have to push here because this is where I live in the real world. On an actual project, sustainability is a checkbox somebody in the ESG department owns. It costs money, it does not move my schedule or my budget in the right direction, and half the time it is marketing so the company can put a leaf on the annual report. My job is to deliver the thing, so why is this suddenly mine too?
Let me stop you right there, Kai. That is the most expensive assumption here. Here is the crack in it. You are treating sustainability as optional overhead, and increasingly it is a hard constraint. It shows up as regulation you must comply with, as risk that can sink the whole project, and as a requirement your client wrote into the contract. And on cost, you are looking at one number. The cheapest thing to build is very often not the cheapest thing to own once you count energy, waste, rework, and the cleanup. Over the life of the thing, the responsible option frequently wins the total. So no, it does not belong to the ESG department. The person who decides the materials, the energy, the suppliers, and the design is the project manager. That is you.
And there is the honest boundary on it, because Kai is not entirely wrong either. You right-size it. A 2-week internal tool does not need a full life cycle assessment and a 100-page sustainability report. That would be its own waste. You scale the rigor to the project's real impact and the business case. A refinery, a highway, a data center, a building that stands for 50 years, those earn the full treatment. A small internal project earns a sensible, proportional look. The rule is never skip it where it is a genuine constraint, and never gold-plate it where it just adds cost without value.
Erica, before we go further, can I read the actual outline? I do not want people taking our word that this is on the exam.
Please, let us put the real thing on the desk, because for this the wording is not subtle at all.
There it is, sustainability, printed in the exam content outline, listed right next to security, health and safety, and regulatory compliance as a category of requirement you have to confirm and manage. That is PMI telling you in writing that this is not a bonus topic. It is a compliance requirement, and on this exam, a compliance requirement is a constraint you design around, never a risk you casually accept.
And to see what this looks like at full scale, look at what Morocco built in the desert. One of the largest concentrated solar complexes on Earth, 2 million mirrors tracking the sun, turning empty Sahara into clean power for more than 1 million people. That is sustainability as a serious, engineered project, not a slogan.
And a plant that size is not a gesture. That is a real capital project with a real budget.
About $3.9 billion to build. That is the scale of the bet, clean power for 1 million people, paid back over decades. So a quick gut check before we move on. The triple bottom line. How many bottom lines is that, and what are they? Do not overthink it.
3. People, planet, profit.
3, exactly, and that is the map for the rest of this. We just placed the frameworks and the standards. Next we get practical, how you actually build sustainability into a real project's decisions and then measure it. Then we close on the exam mindset and drill it. Carry the 3 legs with you. So you have the frameworks and the standards. Now the part where a project manager actually earns it, because a concept you cannot act on is worthless. How do you build sustainability into the real, grubby decisions of a project? And it comes down to a handful of levers you already control.
4 of them, really. Materials, what the thing is made of and where it came from. Energy, how much it burns to build and run. Lifecycle, what happens across its whole life, including the day it is retired. And social impact, the people, the workers, the community, the supply chain. You touch every one of those on a normal project without thinking about it. Sustainability just asks you to make each choice on purpose instead of by default. And the default is almost always the cheapest input and the shortest view. And the biggest shift here is life cycle, because most of us were trained in a straight line. Take the raw materials, make the product, use it, throw it away. Take, make, waste. A circular view bends that line into a loop. You design so materials can be reused, repaired, remanufactured, or recycled back in, and you design the waste out from the start. Instead of ending in a landfill, the end feeds the next beginning. On the exam, when one option ends in disposal and another keeps the material in use, the circular one is the intended answer.
Hold on, circular economy is a buzzword people slap on slides.
It sounds like one until you see it built. Look at the Eden project in Cornwall. There was a china clay pit there, an abandoned hole 60 meters deep, the kind of scar you write off forever. Instead of walking away, they regenerated it into a set of giant biome domes and gardens that now draw millions of people and pump money back into a region that had lost its industry. That is circular thinking at the scale of a whole site. The end of one thing became the beginning of another, and it is standing in Cornwall right now.
And notice the money lesson buried in all of this, because it is the one Kai will actually respect. The cheapest moment to build sustainability in is at the very start, on the plan, when it is just a decision. The most expensive moment is at the end, after everything is built, when it becomes a redesign. It is the same rule as any requirement. Catch it early, it is a line in the plan. Catch it late, it is a demolition and a do-over. So the sustainable project manager front-loads these questions into the design, into procurement, into the risk register, while they are still cheap to answer.
And you can literally build it into the structure. Look at Bosco Verticale in Milan. 2 apartment towers with about 800 trees growing on the balconies, floor to roof. That is not decoration. Those trees cool the building, clean the air, and support wildlife in the middle of a city. The sustainability was designed into the thing from the first sketch, not bolted on with a plaque afterward. That is what designing it in looks like when someone actually means it.
All right, here's my line. If you cannot measure it, it is a slogan. So measure it properly. Energy use per unit, tons of waste diverted from landfill, water consumed, carbon per output, percentage of recycled material. You set the target at the start, you track it like you track cost and schedule, and you report it on a real standard like GRI so it can be compared and audited, not just asserted. A sustainability goal with no metric behind it is exactly the marketing fluff I complained about earlier. A sustainability goal with a number, a target, and a report is a managed part of the project. Same discipline as everything else we do.
And do not lose the first leg in all the talk of carbon and materials, the people. Sustainability is not only environmental. The social account is real, and it is tested. Were the workers safe? Was the supply chain ethical, or did your low bidder win by cutting corners on the humans down the line? Does the finished thing serve the community it sits in, or just extract from it? A project that hits its carbon target while treating people badly has failed the triple bottom line just as surely as one that dumps waste in a river. All 3 legs, or the stool falls over.
And here is the honest part, because I am not going to pretend this is free. Sometimes the sustainable choice does cost more upfront, or takes longer, or is genuinely harder to source. That is real, and the exam does not want you to pretend otherwise. What it wants is for you to weigh it, not skip it. Put the long-term cost, the risk, the requirement, and the value next to the upfront price, and make an honest call instead of reflexively grabbing the cheapest thing and discovering the real bill years later.
And that reflex, weigh the responsible long-term option instead of auto-selecting the cheap fast one, is exactly the move the exam rewards. It is the same instinct as respecting the process instead of freelancing the quick call. When you see 4 options and one is cut the corner to save a little now, and another is the choice that costs a bit more but holds up over the life of the project and meets the requirement, the second one is almost always what they want. So how does all of this turn into the actual answer you pick under time pressure, and how do we keep it from tipping into gold plating? That is the last piece. Let us close it out. So let us turn all of this into the answer you actually pick. Professor Fontaine is back, because this last piece is the exam mindset and 2 drills. And this is our final episode of the whole PMP series, so we are going to land it properly. Professor Fontaine, give them the tell.
Happy to. Here's the pattern to feel in the answer options. When one choice is cheaper or faster but leaves a cost for later, and another choice weighs the whole life, the people, and the environment while still being reasonable on cost and schedule, the exam is usually pointing at the second one. Not because it is noble, but because PMI now defines a successful project as one that delivers value responsibly, not just one that hits a date. Read the options through that lens, and a lot of them get easier.
And let me make the money real, because this is where the fence sitters flip. Picture two versions of the same building. The conventional one costs $1 million to build. The high-performance sustainable one costs $120,000 more. A green premium, call it $1.12 million. So far, the cheap one wins, right? But the efficient building saves $26,000 every single year in energy, water, and maintenance. That premium pays itself back in under 5 years, and the building stands for 50. For decades after that break-even, the sustainable one is simply cheaper to own every year. Cheapest to build lost. Cheapest to own won.
And that is the argument that actually moves me. Over the whole life, the responsible option wins the total more often than not. The number was there the whole time. We were just reading too short a window.
So let me push it to the tempting extreme, because this is where good intentions go wrong. If sustainability is this good, then maximize it. Chase every certification on every project, always buy the greenest, most expensive option, and claim every green benefit you can, because honestly, you cannot put a price on the...
No, that is the overcorrection the exam punishes too. Think of it as a grid. High impact, low cost, easy win, always do it. High impact but high cost, build a real business case, often worth it, especially if it is mandatory. Low cost, low impact, minor, nice to have. But high cost and low impact, real money on green that barely moves the needle just to say you did. That is the trap corner. That is gold plating, a scope sin the exam marks wrong. Mandatory sustainability, you build in. Voluntary, you right size to impact and the business case.
And there is a second trap right next to it, and it is worse. Greenwashing. That is claiming a sustainability benefit you did not actually deliver. Slapping a green label on the report to look good. And it is not just dishonest, it is a genuine risk because regulators fine it and clients walk when they find out. This is exactly why you measure honestly and report only what is true, on real standards. Your green claim has to be backed by the number, or it becomes a liability with a leaf on it. Say what you did. Do not paint what you did not.
And the proof it can be done right and measured is a building in Seattle. It makes more energy than it uses from the solar canopy on its roof, captures its own water, and was designed to a standard that demands you prove all of it, not just promise it. Net positive, verified, not asserted. That is the whole discipline in one place, done on purpose and backed by the numbers.
Okay, 2 quick scenarios to lock it in. Number 1, your sponsor wants the cheapest supplier that hits the deadline. A slightly pricier supplier is the only one that meets a sustainability standard your project charter actually names as a requirement. Your instinct is to protect the budget. What is your best next move?
You go with the supplier that meets the requirement, and if that busts the budget, you raise it through change control. That is the whole trick. It is written in the charter as a requirement, which means it is not a preference you get to trade away to save money. It is a constraint, same as a safety code or a legal rule. The trap answer is quietly pick the cheap supplier and hope nobody checks, because that is choosing to be non-compliant to protect a number, and the exam marks that wrong every time. Meet the requirement and manage the cost impact through the process.
Harder one. Your project will hit all its targets on time and on budget. But a life cycle assessment shows the cheaper material you spec'd creates a disposal and contamination problem in about 10 years, long after you have handed the project over and moved on. What do?
You do not bury it because it lands after handover. That is the exact failure the life cycle view exists to catch. You surface it with the data from the assessment to the sponsor and the right stakeholders, and you recommend the fix with the cost and the risk laid out. The decision may not be yours alone, but the disclosure is. The trap answer is it hits its targets, so ship it, and it is someone else's problem in 10 years. A sustainable project manager owns the whole life of the thing, not just the part before their name comes off it.
Professor Fontaine, thank you. You have made the gap between hitting a target and owning the whole life of what you built impossible to unsee. Before you go, leave them the single line to walk out with.
My pleasure. If only one thing survives the exam room, make it this. A successful project is no longer just on time and on budget. It is responsible across its whole life. So on any sustainability question, weigh the long term and the people and the planet into the decision, meet the requirement, measure it honestly, and never leave a bill for someone else to pay.
And that closes out the 2026 trends and honestly the whole map. Sustainability was the last new piece the exam added, and now you have got it.
It is, and that means we have walked the entire thing together. The people domain, how you lead and serve a team. The process domain, how you deliver the work. The business environment, how your project serves the organization that pays for it. And the 2026 trends on top, artificial intelligence and, today, sustainability. That is the whole modern exam, and you have now seen all of it.
And nobody walks in born knowing this instinct. Honestly, your real-world experience will keep whispering the fast, confident, cheapest answer, and the whole job of studying is teaching yourself to pause and ask what PMI is actually testing. You have been doing that, episode after episode. That retraining is the thing that passes this exam, and you have already put in the reps. Go finish it.
If this series helped the exam finally make sense instead of feeling like a wall, subscribe. It genuinely helps us keep making these. And the free practice questions and flashcards are waiting at certs.professorerica.com. No sign up. Use them for your final push. Before you close the tab, one last question, the one that started us today. Think of a project you have seen that hit every date and every dollar and still left a mess behind. Which leg did it drop, the people, the planet, or the honest long-term cost? Tell us in the comments. Weigh all three legs, build it in early, measure it honestly, and you will pick the answer PMI is actually looking for on this topic and on every one we have covered. That is the series. Now go pass your exam. We will be cheering for you.